Today I'm going to talk about choosing solar power or generator power when it comes to doing the big lap. Alright guys, thanks for joining me for another episode of Ask Steve. Today's question comes from Andy Peacock and he wants to know about whether he should choose solar or a generator for doing the big lap. So I'll read it out to you and then we'll talk about it in a bit more detail. Hi Steve, would be interested to hear your thoughts on solar versus generators for doing the big lap. Plan on doing lots of self-sufficient camping, but split on going full solar on rig and van or just taking a generator. It's 50-50 at the moment. Cheers, Andy Peacock. All right, Andy, fantastic question. And yeah, it's quite a good question these days because, both can work. It's not one is far and away better than the other. They're both completely viable options. So choosing one or the other is something you have to think about. For our big lap, we took a little Yamaha EF1000 generator and we didn't have any solar power. Solar cells and their efficiency and their cost has certainly improved over the last few years and it's now quite a viable option. Would I do the same thing today? Not necessarily. There's different factors at play these days. And so the point of this video is I'm going to talk about some of the different pros and cons of each and then my conclusion as to what I would suggest would be the way to do it. You're probably talking about a similar investment for either one. I would say somewhere between $500 and $2,000 is going to get you a pretty good setup, whether it's a generator or a solar setup. You can do it for less. There are really super cheap options out there, but you're not talking about just an annual 1 week camping trip up the river. You're talking about a big lap where you're going to be using it day in, day out, month after month, potentially year after year. So you really want to invest in decent gear that's going to go the distance and it's going to work for the whole trip. One of the advantages of a generator is it's completely predictable. You can turn it on and you'll get a very predictable and consistent amount of power out of it. And as long as you keep putting fuel in it, you'll keep getting that power. The power on a generator is scalable. You can get a bigger generator to get more power. If you've got to run power hungry devices, then the generator is really the way to go. Things like air conditioners, toasters, kettles, they require a large amount of power. And if you're sucking all that out of batteries or trying to run them off a solar panel, a bank of solar panels, you might struggle. So a generator is like bolt-on predictable performance and it's completely not dependent on the sun. It works day and night and it will work continuously without putting any drain or load on your storage batteries. A generator is also a very simple option. You can go and buy one, plug it in, turn it on, and away you go. There's nothing to install. You can store it in your caravan or in your trailer or in the back of your car, pull it out when you need it, and away you go. So it is probably the simplest option. But there are some downsides to taking a generator. For a start, they're heavy. They're going to be heavier than a equivalent solar setup. And these days everybody's trying to cut down the weight wherever possible. So not only have you got to factor in the weight of the generator, but you've got to think about the weight of the fuel as well. And 20 litres of fuel is roughly 20 kilos, so that's something to consider as well. They're easy to steal. People can just pick up your generator and walk off with it. So that's something you have to be careful of and be conscious of. Unfortunately, it happens. It didn't happen to us, but it has happened. You see it all the time online. People talking about the generators getting stolen, so definitely something to consider. There's also restrictions on where you can use a generator. They do make noise and I can't think of any caravan parks that will let you use a generator. A lot of national parks won't let you use a generator, or if they do, you have to go to a specific area where you can use it. So really you are restricted on where you can use a generator. There's still plenty of opportunities to use them, state forests and roadside stops and things like that, and some national parks, but it's going to be more restricted. Whereas solar, you can use it anywhere and everywhere. There's no issues with that at all. A generator is going to cost you money to run it. If you used, let's say you ran it all day and it used 5 litres of fuel, that could cost you anything up to about $10 these days, with fuel getting up around $2 a litre, especially in remote areas. All right, $10 a day, $70 a week, it starts to add up. This can add up to hundreds and potentially thousands of dollars over a year of traveling. So it might just seem like a few bucks here and there, but if you stop and think about it, it actually could be quite a lot of money. So you need to factor that into your equations as well. And finally, the emissions. Everyone's conscious of the environment these days. A generator is putting out CO2 into the atmosphere, so that's something to consider as well. Looking at some of the pros and cons of solar power. Solar is free and unlimited. You can just keep it, whenever your panels are facing the sun, they're generating electricity for free. There's no emissions, there's nothing coming out of it. It's completely quiet, so you can use it absolutely everywhere. Solar panels need the sun. You know, if you've got a very overcast day or it's nighttime or you're in the shade, then they're not going to work at all or work as efficiently. So the power you're going to get from your solar system is not going to be as reliable as the power you'll get from a generator. And finally, a solar power system is not going to be able to give you the bulk load of power that you'll need to run big devices like a air conditioner or toasters and kettles and things like that. So taking all those factors into account, is one better than the other? And the answer is no, not really. It really depends on what your goals are and how you see your trip unfolding. I love to be self-sufficient. I love to be able to go to remote and out of the way places and be self-sufficient when I get there. And both are going to achieve that. As long as you've got petrol, you can keep your generator going, and they don't really use a lot of petrol. 20 litres can last you a week or two if you're careful with it. Solar panels, the same thing. I mean, most of the places we're going to go, the sun's going to be shining, so we're going to be able to get the batteries recharged and keep everything running. So I don't see one as being an outright winner over the other one. It's just about sort of saying, well, what's my what are the criteria of my trip, and which one's going to work better for me? Now, just a couple of things to keep in mind here. If you're going to go with a solar setup, personally, I would go with multiple panels, and at least one of those panels is mobile. What I mean by that is you might have a panel on the roof of your car and you might have a panel on the roof of your caravan which are permanently mounted there, and whenever they're in the sun they're generating power and recharging your batteries. That's fine, but at the very least I would have one mobile panel. That's one I could take away from the vehicle and set it up somewhere in the sun. And the reason is because certainly when it's hot, you don't want to be parking in the sun. You're going to be looking for somewhere shady to park, and that's going to put shade on your panels, of course. It's at a time like that where you want to get the mobile panel out and put it out in the sun and have a cable coming back to your rig where you can plug it in. If I was only going to have one solar panel, it would be a mobile one, not a permanently fixed one. It's just a personal preference. It's not to say that one's right and one's wrong, but it's hot out there, especially get up the northern part of the country. It can be pretty hot. If you're going to go with a generator, you need to choose an inverter generator. And the reason is an inverter generator puts out pure, clean power. That means you can recharge your phones, you can recharge your laptops, and all those sensitive electronic devices will get a good, clean power supply. If you go with a cheap sort of, Chinese-made generator that's, that you picked up cheap off the internet somewhere, it's not necessarily going to be able to put out clean power. And that means as the revs on the engine go up and down, the power output will go up and down. Now that might be fine for running lights and things like that, but for anything that's got electronics in it, that's not good enough. They need good clean power. So make sure it's an inverter and you'll get that good clean power out of it. Now you want to take about a 50-meter extension cord, because generators are reasonably quiet, but you don't want to be sitting in camp listening to your generator running all day. What you want to be able to do is put it out in the bush somewhere, behind a tree, behind a little hill, and run a 50-meter extension cord out there, so you can tap into the power but not be listening to the generator all day. And finally, make sure you take a chain and a padlock so that you can lock your generator or your mobile solar panels to a tree or the bull bar of your car or something. You need to be able to lock these things down. Unfortunately, they do get stolen. They're an easy target for thieves in a quiet campground area. So whatever you do, make sure you chain it up and with a good solid high tensile chain. I actually use the recovery chain as part of our recovery kit, and a massive padlock. And so far so good, we haven't had any issues with it. So in conclusion, would I choose solar or generator for doing the big lap? And to be honest, in this day and age, I'm leaning towards solar. If I was setting up a rig today from scratch, I would be looking for where I can put a couple of solar panels on the roof, one on the vehicle, one on the trailer or the caravan or whatever it is I'm towing. And I would also have a mobile solar panel that I can take out and set up in the sun and park in the shade. But if that's all well and good, but if I was going to be using an air conditioner or any other big power hungry devices, well then, I would need a generator. Reality is, for me at this point, that's not a big priority. I'm still all about traveling light and small and lean and fast. And so it's going to be a while before I've got anything that's got an air conditioner on it. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I fully expect to be a grey nomad in years to come. But until then, I'd be all about maximising the solar panel opportunity. If money was no object and I was towing a caravan and had the space, I'd probably have both. I'd probably just put solar panels on the top of everything and have a mobile solar panel and chuck a little generator in there as a backup. But, you know, that's a luxury and certainly not something that I'd say you have to do. Well, there you go, Andy. I hope that gives you some insight into which way to go. I know I haven't said absolutely one way or the other because, you know, both can work, and you've got to make that decision for yourself. I'm leaning towards solar these days more so than in the past because it's just gotten more efficient and more affordable. Generators are proven technology, so you can't really beat them either. But, you know, at the end of the day, if you're going to go traveling for a year or more, the cost of running a generator is going to add up. Whereas, you know, the solar system's really going to cost you nothing to run it. That's it for today, guys. If you've got a question for me, email it to asksteve@thebiglap.tv, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell so that you'll know as soon as I upload my next video. And I look forward to seeing you then.